Great, thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda we have some recognitions. First is Dollars for Scholars. We have Ms. Angie Kettle here, who's president of the local chapter Dollars for Scholars, with the recognition. Love this, I think, and please correct me if my stats are off, but annually I believe it's about 70 to 80,000 a year in scholarships raised by Dollars for Scholars and given out to students. It's amazing and wonderful, so we welcome you. Please come up. And others, if you have to come with you, I'm sorry. Welcome.
Good evening.
Can you press the button? Make sure, yeah, green. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yep. My name is Angie Cattell, and I'm the current president of Fairport Dollars for Scholars chapter. Tonight, members of the Dollars for Scholars Board and myself are here to present the annual Donna Yaman Honor Award. This award is given to recognize individuals or organizations who contribute, enhance, and support the goals of Fairport Barrington chapter of Dollars for Scholars. I could not be more honored than to award the 2022 Donna Yaman Honor Award to a longtime board member, Tom Laughlin. Tom was a dedicated member of the Dollars for Scholars Board and joined just after its inception in 1990 until he stepped away from his position in 2020. During that time, he was instrumental in the development of Scores for Scholars, a Fairport basketball fundraiser, and Fairport Sports Clinic, a winter fundraising event to promote youth sports. Both long-standing programs were a great success and collectively raised over $50,000 for Dollars for Scholars. In addition to his fundraising efforts, Tom generously volunteered his time at Dollars for Scholars events throughout his tenure as a board member and was known to lend a helping hand whenever possible. Tom, a former coach, a baseball board member, has a love for sports and a strong connection to Dollars for Scholars in the Fairport community. He continues to raise funds for Scores for Scholars, and when he's not spending time with his family, he can often be found supervising Fairport basketball, football, and lacrosse games. Tom's sense of humor and positive energy are infectious, and his efforts as a board member have a great impact on many young lives in the Fairport community. So on behalf of the Dollars for Scholars Board and myself, we are so thankful for your efforts and support as it has sculpted us in who we are today. Thank you for all you have done and continue to do for the Fairport community and our students. I would like just to call up Phil Jr., Phil Sr. to help me present the Donna Yaman Award.
Donna would be delighted. Good-natured reliability.
Yeah, thank you.
Tom, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Donna would love to be here.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, I think.
First of all, I'd also like the board members for Dollars for Scholars to stand, please. And I'd like to thank them for this recognition and all the work that the Dollars for Scholars Board does for the youth of Fairport and so forth. So thank you. And Brett's got me on the clock, so thank you.
10 more minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cattell. Thank you so much, everyone. Dollars for Scholars. Love what you do for the students and their next step in life as they leave us. Next, we have our monthly bright spot. So, Brad, I'll turn that over to you to key up.
A spirited debate over the merits of democracy in ancient Greece, a conversation about the best way to power a robot, or cheers as young artists present their work. They're all things you can hear in the hallways of our Fairport schools. These are the experiences that enrich our students' academic careers and prepare them for the world.
We don't teach in a vacuum. So to be aware of what the other classes are doing is critical, it's essential. In my class for history, this is a cultural exploration. And so when you're looking at the origins of high-level mathematics that they're studying here, they now know where they're coming from. Humanities is the broader cultural connection to things that would otherwise operate in isolation.
Our students benefit from a robust humanities curriculum of core classes, advanced placement options, and electives through which they explore the world around them and the world of the past.
I've enjoyed all of my classes I've had for social studies throughout Fairport. I think all the teachers are really engaging and have great perspectives that they all teachers have a different diverse perspective that they bring.
The critical thinking strategies they learn as they delve into the past gives them keen insights and perspective on the present and into their academic futures.
I feel that these classes, they really make you think and have a bunch of different ideas and perspectives on things, and I feel like you could really use those in other classes.
You always want to focus on the skill development because historical facts in isolation are essentially meaningless. Everybody's got Google. That's a non-functioning skill. The functional skill is what do you do once you have that? Source evaluation, writing, high-level reading, determining bias, looking for point of view. Those are the skills we're actively trying to teach them.
From the history books
There's a different thing about these elephants that makes them terrifying.
to the drafting table,
This is a Sphero robot.
all Fairport students are welcome to the world of STEAM subjects and called to stretch their creativity and knowledge.
One of the best things about the Hack Lab is it sort of levels the playing field for all of our kids. They come in here with a growth mindset. They're ready to go. It doesn't matter where their reading abilities are or their math skills. They come in and they know that whatever I put in front of them is going to challenge them and push them. But it really accentuates the strengths of many of our students who are creative, out-of-the-box thinkers. And so to watch a child who's kind of quiet and shy in the classroom come to the lab and thrive is really one of the best parts of our job.
Our youngest learners jump into the deep end of science and technology with our elementary school learning labs, where they get first-hand experience with current technology, creative programming, and immersing themselves in collaborative problem solving with their peers.
Working together with other people definitely helps me think of other people's ideas and consider them.
Our high school learners stretch their wings to experience STEAM through hands-on class experiences.
Our students thrive in our STEAM classes through their hands-on experiences. They work really hard to become engaged and take their problem solving to a different level. That hands-on part of what we teach in our STEAM classes really allows the kids to expand their creative thinking, collaborate with other kids in class, and really become engaged in what they're learning.
Welcome to the wonderful world of robotics tech. Just one of the many technology and engineering electives offered at Fairport High School, where students are encouraged to think outside the box.
3, 2, 1, go!
STEAM classes at Fairport foster a sense of creativity, teamwork, and collaboration. All qualities students take with them into their other classes and their lives.
So STEM classes help me in other classes with problem-solving skills and teamwork skills and teamwork building on how to work together with a team and stuff like that.
The district aims to foster the values of critical thinking and creativity through enriching, empowering classes in STEAM and the humanities, all while giving students opportunities to study the past and build toward the future. I'd like to thank Lindsay Reddick and the communications team that helped organize that, really brought that to life.
And I can say we saw what Erica McDermott's doing at Northside when we visited. I don't remember who was that. Joyce, you were there, right? Where they were doing the robotics coding and they were doing figure skating routines with what they programmed on the floor. And the kids were so into it. It was so cool. They loved showing it off, and it was just a very fun day in school. You could tell.
And to cap it off, I'm sorry I missed it, but the robotics team actually won was it states or sectionals? Regionals at RIT last weekend, so that was tremendous. That is an event to go to if you've ever been. It's it's crazy, like a professional wrestling match.
I was going to mention it. I went first time. I've always
Sorry
had
about
a
that.
conflict, but it was really awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'll talk a little bit more about it, but indeed, go to it.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a charge to go either, but the challenge that they're meeting and doing is amazing.
Yep.
I hope we can get them to bring their robot in to at our next meeting or something in April. Does that put too much pressure on by me saying that out loud?
I think they'll relish the opportunity. They could show off the robot.
Yeah, if it can fit in here or come down. If they can teach it to climb, I bet they can teach it to go down these stairs. So. Okay, well, next on the agenda is our school student advisory report, but I do not see her here tonight, so we will move on to President's report. I guess that's a good segue. Thanks, Damon, for that, and Brian. I did want to, for my sake, my son was working on, not for my sake, but his Citizenship in the World merit badge in scouting, Eagle required merit badge, and had to talk about a world event, and that was obvious. And so I just wanted to say our hearts, thoughts, prayers going out to those impacted by the horrors of war in Ukraine and other places around the world, most notable now in Ukraine, but there are people who always suffer the horrors of war, unfortunately, in the world in which we live. And it was an interesting discussion with him. But we are wearing, all of us now, Brotherhood, Sisterhood T-shirts. That was last week. It continues in all my years here in Fairport when I first learned about it, of the love and dedication of the community, the students of all ages. I can't say it's 100%. I know a few students over the years who have not quite as enjoyed it, but some of that's personality and shyness. But generally, came home Friday again, asked my kids how Friday was, and the hugest smile on their face. They've been on the receiving end, I guess, of their buddies coming to visit them when they were in the elementary schools, and now they're on the other side of going to visit, and I just love that it's come full circle on what it was. So, yeah, it was virtual. I should say they didn't go visit. You're right. I'm sorry. But that he still had such a big smile through that type of virtual visit. It was awesome. But thank you for correcting that. I still see it in my mind as a visit. But some of the things getting back to normal, right? The talent show here at the high school was amazing. Was able to watch that streamed. I hope others did too. The amount of talent, singing, dancing, self-composed songs on a ukulele and other things, it was just incredible. So we are also living in the time of musicals, right? I guess they're all over. Concerts, sports, all these things that are servicing thousands of students, that clubs, and that brings us into some of the other successes. And it always a fear, no doubt, of highlighting a few, meaning somebody might feel left out. And I apologize, that's not the intent. But we had 7 teams, the Odyssey of the Mind teams, that went in competition, and 5 of them took first place, 1 4th place, and 1 5th place. Those 5 will be competing next week, I believe, on the 26th at the state competition. Again, to all the students, but then the volunteers who make those types of things happen. It's incredible the amount of time dedicated and the success that's being had. The robotics, I love what was learning, because having watched it, you're right, they took regionals, but they're learning things about second chances. They did not expect to do very well. And there were second chances. They learned about alliances. They learned about fixing. They learned about agony as they sat there. For those who may have watched in in the semifinal competition, you have to win 2, right? 2 out of 3. And the robot went nowhere for whatever time it was, 3 or 4 minutes. And they had to pull themselves out as an alliance member. But that's educational. I mean, there's something there. And they're leaving Thursday, right? They're going to Ohio, is it? To compete yet again. And so they've had a chance to get back to the robot, to look at the challenges, to make fixes, and a huge part of it. And I don't know if those who know about robotics, I'm not trying to advertise that my kid's never been involved, because I'm a bad parent. I should have had my first one involved in that and didn't know enough about it. But they say it's like a mini business. It is. You have marketing people on the team. They know nothing about robotics or engineering, but you do have engineers, and you have fundraisers, and you have those reaching out to Microsoft or L3 Harris, right, to get sponsorships. I mean, this is a huge team of children, and between the Odyssey of the Mind robotics, there's at least 100 students, I think, being serviced just through those programs. All the other clubs, just fantastic. Then they get involved in fundraising. From the fundraising page, Students of the Year, right, that they are raising. We've mentioned this in the past, but trying to raise $20,000 for leukemia and lymphoma. I believe they're really close if they haven't exceeded that, but exceeded it now, right?
There's 2 teams. And they
Two
both
teams.
exceeded it. Yeah.
Each exceeded?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yes.
I highlight this one partly because I've had a son with leukemia, and so I favor this as a fundraising, but not to bias anybody. But one night we were having dinner with one of the families, and then suddenly they remembered just the amount of involvement in the community, which I want to thank because the community supports our students in trying to do these kind of things. But they realized they had to go to 4 different homes and pick up the Raider signs, and then drop them off at 4 different homes. This was 10:30 at night when they remembered, and so there was that mad dash out the door, pick up the signs from some homes, deliver them to another. All those people helping in the fundraising. I know there was fundraising at Panera, as well as just online donations to far exceed. I mean, that's fantastic.
That was one team, and then there's another team that did a whole other set of things.
You want to tell more about that, or no?
What? Yeah.
Sure. No, I just highlighting all what's going on.
Yeah, so there's Team Kroga. All this is to honor Kira Griffin, who is a student here at the high school who recovered from leukemia a few years ago. And Team Kroga has done online auctions, sold T-shirts. I can't remember all the things. I happen to be a member of that team. That's how I know that they've been doing that. They're going to celebrate all of that with our other Fairport team on Friday in Buffalo at the grand conclusion. But Fairport has a wonderful showing and hundreds of people supportive here.
Yeah.
Oh, I know, we had karaoke. That was another one, and a concert.
Not one of my fundraising favorites, but you won't catch me there. But amazing. We just tonight between those 2 teams and then the Dollars for Scholars, we're already talking about well over $100,000 in fundraising type activities and giving back to the community. That's amazing that our students get to be involved in, be the recipients of all the educational type things that are happening there.
Peter, just if you don't mind, a couple more comments around the robotics team, because I have been involved more in the years past than I was this year. But what I'm impressed in that program is really the community and industry involvement. They have adult mentors from different industries helping them through the process. The engineering mindset and the collaboration that they have together as a team is really, really impressive. They're doing scripting. They're learning, I know in Erica McDermott's class, they're learning Python scripting, which is impressive. They're doing scripting, software, hardware design, their marketing planning, and they're adhering to timelines. And then you're right, the problem-solving capacity that they're learning in testing, a theory, testing the hypothesis of the design and seeing if it works, and then going back and making modifications to improve is really, that's those skills and the cross-functional skills that are really impressive to learn at this level that they're going to take with them as they go on. And I think if you talk to the program leaders and you talk about some of the graduates from that program, they've gone on to Lockheed Martin or Boeing or other impressive engineering curriculums in college and then companies as they get out. So it's a great thing. Sorry, Peter. Go ahead.
No, thank you.
Sorry.
Open discussion. But so confirming robotics is in Cleveland. They're there now, or they're leaving?
They're leaving.
Yeah, leaving Thursday for Cleveland.
To one more thing though, and I know we have talked in we have talked in years past about project-based learning. I remember, like years ago, we talked about creating a wing, and I'm not sure this is practical at this point, but really having English language arts, mathematics, science, and technology all revolving around a specific project. And there are schools that we visited in East Syracuse that had done something like that. But it's a topic really worth thinking about as we progress in the future in terms of different learning experiences and different models of learning that our kids might benefit from.
Yeah. Well, the comment on the bright spot I thought was interesting because it's true. The day and age has changed. Do you need to memorize the order of the presidents of the United States?
Yeah.
Not so much.
Yeah.
I could have it on my phone within 30 seconds.
Yeah, and I
right?
love the context of learning a topic through different lenses and different perspectives.
Yeah.
And then having thoughtful discussions around it. Right?
The critical thinking skills that come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
One story I'd like to share with you from National Public Radio, if you don't mind, I've been kind of anxious to share it with my fellow board members. Susan Stamberg, I don't know if those who listen to NPR know who Susan Stamberg is. She's one of my favorites. And art where you're at, and I'll tell you why I want to share this at the end, but it was really awesome. The Baltimore Museum of Art, and I'm reading more than I generally like to, asked its security guards to curate an exhibition. Out of the 45 security guards, 17 applied, and those selected were paid as curators on top of their security guard salaries, right? And the variety of art that they picked was incredible, they said. And so here's a quote from one of the art historians and a curator with experience over 50 years herself, and this is one of her comments. As she sat in a meeting with the BMA guards where they pitched their picks, so they had to kind of sell this group on it. I was so energized and enthused to hear these extraordinary personal reactions to art. It was so beyond the art speak that I'm used to. It was fresh, immediate, personal, and perceptive. It had a profound effect, she says. It happened to me at a point when I really needed to be energized about art again. I thought about that. She could have taken a snotty position. I'm educated, I'm experienced. And I bring this up because for me, as I listened to it, I realized at the end, the beauty of diversity. That they reached outside of their own selves, what they knew, and asked somebody else who didn't have the background, the education or whatever, and said, curate an exhibit for us as security guards, some who had worked there a year, others who had worked there for many, many years, and create this exhibit. And they were ecstatic about what came out of this experience. And I thought, what a great way to reach out, what a great way to kind of promote diversity of thinking, diversity of backgrounds. They listed, if you're interested, you can look it up. But the diversity of backgrounds of the security guards who applied and the arts that they picked, you can see all of that, or you could go down to Baltimore and visit the art museum and see the exhibit itself. But anyway, just was re-energizing to me about the efforts of diversity. How do you allow for diversity of thought and thinking and background culture to come out and making that something that our kids experience, and so that they're ready for the world in which they are going to move on to when they launch from here. But that leads us to, there's been some talk about a school visit. Last time, Brian, where you had said you were there, did you want to more about the visit, or anybody else who visited?
It was me, Mary, Caitlin, and Joyce. We were at JA. Jefferson Avenue, and Joyce can speak more. I had an abbreviated visit, but I mean, just the work that they're the kiddos are doing wonderful. Ryan Chernow is just doing beautiful work there. Joyce, you can speak kind of more specifically to it, but seeing the kids in school, seeing that how excited they are in the classroom. Nothing stands out. I'm sorry, it was a while ago. Nothing really stands out specifically from that visit for me, other than just, what a positive experience it was and what a positive environment that school is.
Yeah, I think the main thing is the enthusiasm of the children. It's just explosive. They're so happy to be there. They're working together. They're, everything that we missed in seeing in elementary schools is back, and they're just doing wonders. The administration, of course, is terrific there, and we spent a lot of time, listening to the things that they had to say about what's going on. Again, their enthusiasm is also infectious. So, the school visits are one of the best things that we do. I think it's a very important piece of what board members do. And, the law requires that we see each school once per year. A lot of people take that to mean you walk in, you do a walkthrough. Some do it in the evening. What's the point when there aren't children there? But we really delve in and spend a few hours visiting with children, teachers, administration, and I just think it's a great thing that we do. I know I love it. I wish we could all get to all of them, but we do have jobs and other lives, so sometimes we can't make it, but I love it when I can.
And something just came to mind, Joyce and Pete, kind of building off of your last point. We spent some time in the art room in art class and seeing how excited the students were. I remember what they were drawing, but they were all in, and they were showing us what they were doing, and the teacher was walking around engaged, and it was just, there were a lot of Muppet pictures on the wall, which made me happy, but it was just a wonderful all around, just, you could tell the kids love to be there, which is the most important thing.
Brian and Joyce, just a clarifying question. So JA, elementary school, did you see kids reading there?
We saw academics, we saw art, we saw PE, we saw a little of everything because we have everything in our schools.
Okay, so they can read?
And we stress it all.
They can read there?
They really can.
That's good. Okay, great. All right, thanks.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, our school visits tend to be just after this meeting, our next one this Friday, if we can remember for next time, but those who attend. But yes, it was about a month ago.
I got to get a plug. Minerva Deland's up next. I think we have a few board members going to Minerva Deland on Friday. I know that Mr. Monticelli, who's out there, is ready to welcome the board.
Yep, fantastic.
And of course, the staff.
Great. Okay, then we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is our superintendent's report. Mr. Provenzano.
It's really hard to, guess what you're going to be reporting on each month. So, you may see some redundancy here. I'll do my best to add a different approach, but I think you're hitting on many of the main themes that are incredibly important to us as a school district. I would be remiss if I didn't start out by, first of all, welcoming. I see administrators here. I see our staff, educators. I see food service here. I see parents and community members here. Many different people make this happen, right? We have an incredible school. Joyce, as you just said, we have incredible programs because behind every amazing experience, every meaningful experience that connects kids to greater experiences is a caring Fairport educator. And I don't take that for granted, and I just feel like it's important that I recognize our educators who are out here and our community members are here as well. So thank you. I do think, on a very somber note, what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Europe is incredibly important. I see what's happening there. We think about it, we reflect, we send our wishes and our thoughts and our prayers and our passions to make sure that there's restoration, that there's an end, and that we could see our way through it. Together, I see it deeper though. I see what we do here in our schools every single day directly related to what's happening right now in Europe. We could focus it in other parts as well, as Mr. Forsgren said. Right now our eyes are on Europe and what's happening in Ukraine, but we could see it happening here in the United States as well. We see lots of pain, we see lots of suffering, we see lots of division, we see lots of growing and learning and opportunities. Opportunities to become better, and our kids are going to be the ones to solve that. And this board has a priority, and I'm very proud to serve this priority, to make our students the best version of themselves. They will be successful based upon their individual growth. It's not everybody's growth. Everybody has a different path, but they will be the ones to solve the world's problems, whether it's in Europe, and we pray for a speedy end, restoration, or whether it's happening here in our own country. And that's why we do Brotherhood Sisterhood Week. It's 26 years in the making. It just didn't happen this past year or 2 years ago. It's been going on for 26 years, deeply embedded in who we are as a community, as a school community. Our kids, when they walk through graduation, they say that that's one of their favorite times, Brotherhood Sisterhood Week. And I'm going to share a little bit with you on what it means to our school community.
Even though we did get to talk to our buddies over Google Meet last year and are doing the same thing this year, Outreach Day has been different. Outreach Day for us just proves how close Fairport schools are. Even a pandemic couldn't keep us from making little whippy stick flowers with our buddies. Being close as a community is something that we at Fairport take incredibly seriously. Having the opportunity to learn about how important it is that we get to know about each other from elementary school, and having the opportunity to feel that connection graduating high school shapes how all of us grow to understand how important the human connection is.
We know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me. We are not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. For it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Swallow your pride. If I have been, you need to borrow. For no one can fill those of your needs that you won't need. Lean on me. We are not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. For it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'd understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me. When you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. Lean on me. For said it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. We be jamming, 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 hey. We be jamming. Just call me when you need a friend.
So in addition to problem solvers, critical thinkers, empathetic individuals, creative individuals, trustworthy individuals, high character individuals, team-oriented individuals, flexible, open-minded individuals who are able to solve diverse problems, look at different scenarios in ways that we can't look at. We commit to the ideals of brotherhood, sisterhood week like no other school community does, and I'm proud to be a part of that. Thank you, Board of Education, for allowing that to happen. It's such an important part of who we are as a school community, and watch what happens when I do this. It's gonna go right to it again. Good. The arts are alive and well. It's many different ways that we celebrate our students, and we're excited that the art show is back at Parrington Square Mall. That runs through April 12th. We'll see many family members out there. Our students' work is on display. Award-winning photos and artistic talents will be on display. I'm proud of all the work that's gone into that, and we look forward to honoring 9 Fairport High School students this month. They were selected to represent Fairport with their photography at the Through the Student Lens show at Image City. We'll be sharing that on social media in the very near future, but our students are engaged, and the programming that they have, it's interesting that we are doing instructional programming tonight, and it's an incredible investment that pays great dividends. These are your pictures, Erica, so I appreciate it. Without, a strategic plan that's focused, that gives people the opportunity to see exactly what we're trying to accomplish. None of this wonderful programming, none of these ideals come to fruition. And we look forward to doing more with our strategic plan in the near future. You'll see that it's aligning to the whole child tenets, where each child is served. Fairport Central School District's vision and mission, which, by the way, has been updated yearly for the past 7 years. The Board of Education core beliefs is currently under review and is an evolving document. As we move forward, we'll be seeing and hearing more about that. But when we talk about our strategic plan and the culturally responsive framework and our planning for the future, These are the things that are deeply embedded and woven throughout our new plan that we're going to be reviewing. This idea of care, civility, awareness, respect, and embracing differences. This idea of making sure that we're accountable to each other and equitable experiences are a part of all of our students' experiences in our schools. Each student should be engaged civically. I know that's very important for our board because they see that our students need to go out not only locally but globally and have agency, so their voice and they have choice and opportunities to explore who they are. We realize that we're better together and we're going to be communicating and holding accountability measures to our strategic plan. The strategic plan just didn't happen. There's been opportunities to engage with multiple different stakeholders, whether it's the Code of Conduct Committee, whether it's our focus groups that we had in the fall, or our parent surveys, and opportunities to listen to our students as well. We're rebooting our strategic plan and looking forward to doing that as we move forward. But I'm going to invite Dr. T to come forward and talk a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing with our strategic plan.
Thank you, Mr. Provenzano. Just want to go over, I'm not going to read this all to you. Our strategic plan is still in draft form, but we continue to craft our goals and our priorities so that we can have a very clear vision of where we're headed in the next 5 years. The first goal is all about a healthy, safe, inclusive, and welcoming environment, which goes right along with what we just saw from Brotherhood Sisterhood Week. Our second goal is all about getting our kids prepared for college and career readiness. It's all about the high quality teaching and optimal outcomes for each student. And that's a small word change from every or all, but each student really makes it personal. And so you'll see that woven throughout the plan when it's published. And our third goal is about a fiscal responsibility and, an optimal and responsive operations. And so working together and closely with our finance department, making sure that we are responsible with the funds that you entrust to us. Also, that we are a sustainable school, and that we promote sustainability and environmental conservation in everything that we do. So we look forward to finalizing this plan. We'll have that out to you by the end of June, ready to go for rollout starting July 1.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thavenason. I appreciate the time and energy you put in with all the different areas of our strategic plan. Mr. Loff is going to talk a little bit about our hiring and how we've been able to fill positions that are in dire need.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Provenzano. You can see up on the screen, focusing on two areas, per diem teacher substitutes and the transportation department, which are two areas that are critical to keeping our schools open and moving forward. And you can see since December, for the per diem teacher substitutes, since we increased our rates and our recruitment efforts, that we have really started to pick up additional per diem substitutes to add to our pool on top of the solid base of candidates that we already had. And actually, good news for March, this presentation was completed before we did the final update of the personnel agenda, so you'll actually see 9 subs on there for March, which brings our total to 63. And 52 of those subs were secured from December till now, which speaks to the change in rates and the increased recruitment efforts. Over on the transportation side, you can see that we continue to add on-call attendants and drivers. The on-call attendants are typically drivers in training, so those folks are all at different stages of their driver training, which can take up to 6 weeks to get the CDL and clearance to start driving after they go through all the steps. So we're excited to have 21 new transportation folks with us since the start of the 2021-22 school year. It is important to note, obviously, we got to keep these recruitment efforts going because, as you can imagine, throughout the course of any school year, you have your typical kind of resignations and retirements as well. So not only do we need to continue to keep those efforts going to fill positions that we lose through kind of your standard resignations and retirements that happen on a yearly basis, but to continue to try and just fill all the necessary openings that we have with these critical positions.
as I look around, the food service is incredibly important in, making sure that we feed our students, making sure that they have the right nourishment as they come into schools. And, we're always recruiting, and not just transportation and per diem substitutes, but in all those essential areas. And every area is essential. I'm really proud of our transportation department. I know that it's been a struggle. I know that they kept moving forward, even in the most challenging of times. And of course, our substitutes have been vital to help us move forward as well throughout this. I think it's also incredibly important to understand this board. I'm really proud of how they've kept us focused and having high expectations on facilities. Because when we have done our strategic planning, the community has said we need to take care of our facilities. We need to make sure that we're maintaining them, that we're making sure that the useful life of our facilities doesn't outlive its welcome, and that we're updating our facilities. I know that we'll be talking about the 2019 project in a little bit, but we're going to talk a little bit about what we've been speaking to at workshops and even at the last board meeting about a potential capital project relative to what everybody continually wonders is what's happening with Minerva DeLand. Is that still happening? We're looking at the current fourth graders who are right now in our schools to be projecting in the year 26-27 to be the first class of students who attend Fairport High School as ninth graders. Okay, so that just trying to add clarity. A lot of people, resonates with, where their child is in our schools. So this year's fourth graders, we plan on having them be the first at Fairport High School. But before that can happen, and we've spoke about this at our first Fairport Forward project and referendum in 2019, we're here now in 2022 where we'll be anticipating to bring another bond proposal to the community by December of 2022. And that is an important referendum because that will allow us to stage Fairport High School to get our students over to Fairport High School so they can have a facility that meets the needs and the programming here. I'm going to have Mr. Stevens jump in and just talk a little bit about this timeline that we have here, particularly where we are right now to where we're heading through in December and into the future.
Great, thanks, Mr. Provenzano. So as you can see up on the screen, we have a draft timeline here in terms of the different steps and process in order to get to a bond vote, through a construction process, to occupying a completed building at the end of construction process. So with the December of 22 the referendum date, then we'd go through a design phase. If the referendum were approved, there's a design phase and then an eventual submission to the state education department for approval. So anticipating approval at the end of 2023. At that point in time, district could go out for bids and then hope to begin construction in 2024. And you can see in yellow is about a 3-year duration period for construction. As you can imagine, a good portion of construction in schools takes place over the summer, so it does take some time and scheduling and process in order to complete that work. And then with end of construction in 2026, which then, as Mr. Provenzano mentioned, would be anticipated to have the current fourth graders occupy the high school as ninth graders in the 26-27 school year. Key pieces we go through, we're continuing through the process of evaluating state building aid. We have to go through a process with the state education department in terms of what will be allowed to come over as aidability from Minerva DeLand over to Fairport High School. So there are some key pieces throughout this process. Timing is always around also when building aid becomes back available for a school building. So, for example, the state puts aid on a 5-year rolling clock. So construction done in 1 year, that aid is not freed up until 5 years following the SED approval date for that. So those are all key pieces as we look through this process. Evaluate our capital reserve available balances in terms of.
So, Matt,
yes.
I'm just going to ask you to slow down now for novice purposes, because I think what you're talking about is really important, and I think this is a facility improvement cycle process, right? Continuing on into the right, and what you just said is important in terms of state aid for these projects that come back to the district to help us do these facility projects, but aid drops off in cycles. And so as the aid drops off, we can spend that money again to get new projects going. But that aid cycle and the debt dropping off is important to maintain the tax rolls at a relatively level base, right? To allow
Correct.
this to
Yep.
happen without a huge impact to taxpayers.
Yes, that is correct. So that's a key piece in terms of why the high school work began first and from the 2019 project is the sooner we get approval, the sooner that aid frees back up to be able to be used on the next project at the high school. So the state, try to keep this as simple as possible for each build. The state actually provides a cost allowance for aid at each school building that can only be used at that school building. So it rolls off at each school building. So that's the process in terms of how the aid flows. And it's actually aid that we get following an expense, not actually all up front in the process. I think that's important to note as well through this. So all key pieces, looking at the state building aid, our debt fall off, and the construction pieces at each school building.
So while all that's happening, and it's a very important process, it's not something it just happens, and we've all learned that throughout the past several years. We're looking at our district properties, for example, Balmer Place and district offices on Church Street. The board has talked about the potential for selling those properties and then relocating district office to Minerva DeLand, taking some of our Balmer Place administration, moving them to Minerva DeLand as well, but also bringing them over to Martha Brown because there's some quality office space there that would get our directors, some of our directors into buildings. And we still need Minerva DeLand. Minerva DeLand is going to be a functioning building that has lots of use. If you go there right now, you'll see kids playing basketball. You'll see kids in the pool. And you'll see plays there over the weekend, concerts throughout the week. So that facility is something that we still need, even with our current enrollment, which is projected to flatline because over the past several weeks, we had an enrollment study and we had it presented to us in a workshop and confirmed our numbers as we measure twice so we can cut once. I think I said something about cutting 3 times. I don't want to do that last time, but I messed that one up. But I think it's just important, I appreciate the clarity from the board about what we're going to be doing with our next potential capital project. I appreciate the clarity on what we're going to be doing with district properties, asking us to continue to explore that. And then what do you do to repurpose some of those places?
So I think it's important to note the facility projects as it aligns to the strategic plan that we reviewed earlier, and that is providing improved ongoing facility improvement while being frugal with taxpayer money, right? And having that accountability as well. So this is all for the good of the strategic plan and for the students and community.
Anyone else want to add to this? Because I know it's been a topic of conversation at board workshops or in the last, Erica?
I can just say, I think looking at the additional properties, do we really need them? Probably not. It would take a lot of money and work to get them where they need to be just overall in general. I know when we talked about this, I mentioned having more of a general location for many of our services, which could be housed at Minerva. I think it would be wonderful. As a parent, my kids get all different things, and having everybody in one place in terms of special education, administrators, that meeting spots, there's just a lot of just space that could be used efficiently. And I think it would be more welcoming for families to have one central location instead of separate buildings all over the village. So that's my personal opinion. And the track is there too, and we definitely need that.
That timeline's important. And I have that up there just so people can have a visual reference as we will continue to have these conversations over the next several weeks and months, so we could see that when we anticipate to finalize our plans moving forward. Really looking forward, finally, to our last and final professional or parent and community engagement opportunity. We're focusing on ongoing professional learning. We're asking community members to join us from 6:30 to 8 right here at FHS in room 512 on March 28th. That's Monday coming up. It's the last in a series, and hopefully we can have community members come out. We'll have staff members hopefully there as well. Lots of planning. It's been a successful series and opportunity to engage with our community. Thank you, Board of Education. Thank you for all that you do for our schools. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this incredible school community.
Thank you, and thanks for taking those kind of directions. I know that there was a time before you were superintendent, we did not have a strategic plan nor a real great facilities plan for keeping them updated. Now we have both, and we keep refreshing them. So in terms of sustaining us into the future, I think we're in a good position to do that. But to talk about that a little bit is also Mr. Stevens, who talks about how indeed all these things do get paid for. So our treasurer and investment update, please, Mr. Stevens.
Great, thank you, and good evening. We have the Treasurer's and Investment Update Report for the month of January of 2022. We had a beginning general fund cash balance of $85.4 million, receipts for the month of $7.8 million, disbursements of $10.1 million for an ending cash balance of $83.1. Of the $83.1, approximately $81.5 is invested in a mix of money market, insured cash sweep, and CDARS accounts, which is about 98% of the overall cash balance. As it relates to previous year, pretty similar in terms of the inflows and outflows. You can see the large revenue there of roughly $7 million. That's related to our STAR payments we get as the other piece of the property tax for aid. We get our STAR payment in January annually. Revenues and expenses through January, we've got $99 million in revenue, again, primarily state aid and the STAR payment. Primarily property tax and the STAR payment, as well as some state aid. Expenses of $64.3 million. So you start to see the expenses start to continue to increase and grow closer to the revenues as we progress throughout the school year. And that is the report. Oh, one other item I wanted to highlight. You see $200,000 also coming back into the general fund of money that was borrowed by school lunch, now coming back over to general fund as the federal and state aid's coming in for the school lunch department. And that's the report for January.
Yes, thank you. So that brings us to the consent calendar. Again, any item in the consent calendar is just vote on it as a single action discussion. So if there's something in this, now's the time to make a motion to amend the agenda. Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to approve the consent calendar as outlined. Brian, thank you. Second. Marty, all in favor? Any opposed? No, that's 5-0. Damon has stepped out for a minute. And donations to accept. We have a couple donations. One, a book donation by Mr. David Levine, and then a donation of $500 also from the Jefferson Avenue PTA. So a motion to accept those donations. Joyce, and second, Erica. Just say thank you. If we can make comments on or discuss, but all in favor?
Aye.
And see none opposed, 5-0. Personnel actions, instructional, some of the things that were highlighted by Mr. Loff. I'd like to hear this. Motion to accept the instructional actions as outlined. Brian, thank you. I'll second that. So second by me. Questions or comments? No, hearing none. All in favor? None opposed? Did you vote on that, Mr. Buffum? 6-0, 5-0, I'm just. Non-instructional and civil service. Motion to approve the non-instructional civil service is outlined. Motion to approve. Marty, thank you. Second. Brian, questions or comments on this?
I'd like to, if I may. I
Yes,
know it's
please.
not
Yep.
for me to,
Nope.
but Christina Roth, who's my administrative confidential secretary, 33 years of being a superintendent's confidential secretary, 22 years of that in Fairport. We'll definitely miss her command and presence and support. So I know that you're about to make a motion on that, but I just thought I'd pay tribute.
She deserves a round of applause. She's tremendous.
I think so.
Thanks for pointing that out.
It's hard not to do a little teasing about you, Brett and Christine, but indeed, she's been wonderful over all the years.
Yeah, I don't know what we're going to do with you after.
I'm out. I don't know.
Thank you for that, though. Very appropriate. All in favor?
Aye.
See none opposed, 6-0. Athletics, motion to approve athletics as personnel as outlined. Marty, thank you. Second by Brian. Questions or comments? No? All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, 6-0. And a tenure appointment. We have a motion to approve a tenure appointment as seen in the public content there for those who'd like to approve and to see, or we'll bring it up on the screen quickly, but if you can see it. Right. Brian, thank you. Second. Erica. All in favor? No opposed? 6-0. And then.
And congratulations with that as well.
Indeed, thank you,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Always love seeing
Yeah.
staff get tenured. And finally, a motion to approve the non-collective wage adjustments that's recommended by the superintendent of schools. I'll make the motion. Do we have a second? Marty, thank you. Any questions or comments? Hearing, seeing
Just,
none?
well, you go so fast.
Okay, sorry.
But, I mean, just overall general comment, and that is that, speaking for myself, but also for really the rest of the board, I believe we really feel good about this, and we feel like this is well-deserved and earned, and we're glad that we're able to help address. And thank you, Doug, for helping prepare that for us.
Based on thought exchanges, felt like the community also supported very much making sure we take care of our personnel.
Yep.
So, yep. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? See none, 6-0. So the presentation's always great to get our 2019 capital improvement project. Here we are, 2022. So love seeing how far things are coming along. So invite up to the stand, but
I brought my hard hat tonight. I was disappointed that there was nothing going on.
Thank you, Kevin, from campus. Are you, yep, where are we? Yeah, what, can you do that? Whatever's, thank you. Definitely, because I can't move it like that. That's good.
Just want to press that button. There you go.
Alrighty, good evening. Tonight's presentation is on the Phase 1A project here at the high school. This is the work completed in the month of February. So just a quick look at the overall financials. We won't run through
is the
each.
microphone on? Sorry, press the button.
Is it on?
Is it on? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So just an overall look at the project financials. We won't run through each one, but now that we have Phase 1B and the high school finishes project bid, you'll see those contract values on there, along with the state contracts similar to 1A. So a closer look into the project financials. So far, the district has approved just over $392,000, leaving us $3 million and change in the contingency, which is about a little over 11% spent. And our contract allowances remaining are still at $182,000. So looking ahead, as far as work activities around the building here at the high school, inside the kitchen and cafeteria, we're continuing installation of ceiling grid around areas where we are wrapped up. In the faculty lounge and staff, kitchen staff bathroom, tile work is going on in there. And then up on the second floor, we're completing the above ceiling, installations and priming painting of walls along with the ceiling grid. And then out at the multi-purpose field, made good headway with the concrete curbing around that field, and then beginning installation of the scoreboard foundations. So here's a look at some of that ceiling grid going on in the kitchen cafeteria. Here's a look just in front of the serving line. Here's a shot of that kitchen staff bathroom tile going in. Take a look at the kitchen cooler freezer. And then back inside the kitchen hood and wall panels going up. And this is the faculty lounge stair, which will take you out into the corridor. Here's a look at the second floor classroom 218 flooring. Here's up at the second floor, a mechanical room that we've begun demolition on. And then out at the multi-purpose field, you can see that concrete curbing going in along with the fence posts.
How is that going with the weather?
It's been surprisingly well through the winter months. It's been a very accommodating winter, we'll call it. We're hoping for an accommodating spring as well.
I know.
Yeah. And here's a look at the new backstop posts over at the JV field. And again, those were the dugouts that we relocated from the existing varsity fields. Are there any questions?
Just really quick though, flooring that's in 218, is that the terrazza flooring that we've talked about at?
No, that is HV vinyl tile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm with you. I'm just trying to see which one we want to do. There's so many.
Slide 16.
Oh, this
16?
Yep.
Sorry, I thought that one.
There you go.
Thanks, Damon.
Start out.
It's worth seeing.
This is over on the west side of the field, and again, this is the forming and pouring of the concrete curb. Those fence posts going in. This is over on the east side, and right in that corner, this is the softball field we're looking at here.
There you go. These are on our website and our construction website, and there's a whole slate of them, and we really appreciate this. This really tells a story.
It is a great tool. Look at the past month of work.
Have the turkey vouchers left?
I have not seen them up
they
there,
get
but see if they return.
Yeah, they probably will.
Great. No questions? Other things? No.
Perfect.
Kevin,
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you all coming here. Good work being done. So that does take us to next, right? The instructional budget. This is the draft one, so not a complete, but where we stand right now in the budget process for the instructional side.
Wait for Mr. Stevens to come forward. This is my favorite part of the budget process. It really is, because we have been talking about bright spots, programs, facilities improvement. You're seeing it all come together through the budget process, but our instructional programming is allowed to happen because of what we do here tonight and what we have done here and other nights and other years. Erica, all your pictures are used up, and I hope that but we'll try to collate them into one giant collage as we move forward, because I think that tells the story better than the numbers in the budget lines that we're going to be referring to here tonight, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. We are extremely committed as a district. Our Board of Education has prioritized that each child receives what they need, and it's reflected. And the budget lines, again, tell the story of how we create connections in our schools, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. This presentation here tonight, again, not a lot of pictures, right? So refer back to the pictures, right? But you're right, and I agree with you, but we have to go through components of this budget, and from our budget goals to the actual instructional budget, the expenditure plan, review of the tax levy limit, which speaks to our revenues, projections, and how we pay and support our whole child programming that the board has prioritized. It speaks to long-term planning with reserves and what we're going to be asking voters to approve in the future
in May at our annual budget vote, which we'll be sharing details moving forward. And I lost my. Oh. Did it switch? Thanks for your help, Peter. I appreciate it. The board has set priorities throughout the school year. Again, these just didn't show up. Once July hits, August hits, we start talking about, what are our budget goals moving forward? The budget process is a year-long process. We've seen educational programming. We've talked about fiscal sustainability, facilities planning, but the one that's new is this concept of conservation and sustainability. How do we continually be in tension? Because, again, your budget tells a story. It tells you, the community, what we prioritize and what we see as important. You could see that our enrollments have decreased throughout the years. It's been a steady decrease. Like I referred to earlier, we just did a enrollment study. Trends are holding true. We are flattening out. We'll be around 5,389 to 5,500 over the next several years, and remaining flat. You could, again, within that time, we don't anticipate any peaks. So when we talk about, that's an important question that we've studied over the past several weeks and months. As we talk about investments in transitioning students from Minerva Land to the high school, we need to make sure that our numbers are accurate. And we feel confident based upon the projections and the studies that have been engaged multiple times over the past several years. This wasn't the first study that we've done, but we just want to, again, make sure that we're being prudent in our projections, because we know that we need to invest wisely. And we feel confident moving forward. You could see 391 happening, kindergartners coming in. That's the projection, right? You'll know in Fairport, you'll have students come in to our school district. So that 391, could blossom to 420, 430, right? That's, what they call the live birth ratio that happens over time. Students come in, students come out, but more students are coming in as we move along. And these numbers, we've seen them as high as, since I've been superintendent, 500, 530. And I know other graduating classes have been significantly higher, but, we are where we projected to be. As we build this budget and we try to create a program that meets the needs of all of our students, we're focused on our class sizes. We know that that's been a community expectation, particularly in the K-2 area. I know our Board of Education has prioritized this as well. So we are looking to keep our class sizes under 17, under 19, and so on and so forth. I won't read through every single line item, but these numbers are comparable to Monroe County, our neighbors, our neighboring districts, if not significantly better in certain areas relative to the ratio. If you see 25 up there, that's an up to number. That doesn't mean that's the number, right? When you're looking at the number of sections that a school can hold, that impacts the class sizes. You'll see that the enrollment changes are happening at our elementary, and you'll see the 6th grade at Martha Brown and JP. You'll see that you have a total of 8 reductions in sections. But we'll tell you about what happens with those sections in just a moment, and it's really exciting. In 7 through 12, we see class size projections between 23 and 26, and 24 and 27. Those are the ranges that we've have consistently stayed within as we built budgets and supported our students and tried to give them an expansive program. There are going to be anomalies. There's going to be opportunities in art classes, technology classes, where there's health and safety concerns that there'll be lower numbers. We need to be concerned with, did you have something? Okay. By all means, if you have questions, jump in. So as far as key staffing changes at the elementary and middle school, again, the K through 6 enrollment, as we talked about, is decreasing overall. We are going to reallocate elementary FTE, full-time equivalents, to support the new elementary master schedule. Our administrators have been working hard with Dr. Thavanason on creating a new elementary master schedule that allows for activity period to happen in the school day.
That's opportunities for more programming, opportunities to engage in more STEAM or STEM or humanities activities, opportunities to enrich all students. We saw the Hack Lab in action. I know the board has talked about that, but we are committed to making sure every single building has a Hack Lab. And so we are going to be repurposing staff through position analysis. I've had an incredibly thorough process to meet this imperative. Because when we talk about problem solving, we talk about giving opportunities for students to interact and engage in problem solve in a different modality that's energizing. And we're excited to bring this to our elementary moving forward. And we'll be talking about posting and who's going to be filling those as we move along throughout this process. And 3 full-time equivalents will be reduced through attrition, naturally through retirement. So that's how we're managing some of our retirements and our class size reduction to fit an imperative the board has made a priority. Secondary, we've heard loud and clear through multiple different bargaining units, adding a building level administrator at Minerva DeLand. One thing that we couldn't predict 4 years ago was a pandemic and the impact that it would have on our students. We see more and more students needing consistent support, administrative support. We see students who are truant, families that need support, and this would certainly serve a need. So you'll be seeing and hearing us talk about this key staffing change moving forward. The instructional budget is just one component of the overall budget. We've talked about general support, transportation, community services, employee benefits, debt service, and fund and debt service and fund interfund transfers over the past few months. But tonight we're focusing on our programming and the pieces that make us who we are as a community. And everything that we do and talk about here tonight relative to the instructional programming supports the elementary master schedule. It supports the class size initiative that we have in Fairport that our community has deemed as a priority. It supports providing K-5 health, 6-8 health, and opportunities for students to take health in grades 9 through 12. Again, wellness, health, safety, the well-being of our students is a priority of our Board of Education, and it's our community's priority when we have asked multiple different times, and those programs are essential. We offer a continuum of special ed programming. We will continue occupational education, which is our robust elective programs. Mr. Clark is always talking about how, the electives that we have here, he sits around the table with his colleagues from our county, second to none. We offer our students up to 98 different electives, opportunities to explore, try things out so they can be the best version of themselves. This does not account for our honors level courses or our world language courses. So this is where the investment goes. This is where the story is being told of who we are as a Fairport community. Oh, and by the way, did you know that Fairport High School is a nationally recognized blue ribbon school? Consistently, it's recognized in Newsweek as a top performing school. We have 2 middle schools that have been recognized for the past 10 years as schools to watches. 2% of middle schools in the United States have that designation, and we're proud to be a part of that in Fairport. And as we build an elementary master schedule and we look at creating more opportunities for enrichment for all and opportunities for students to take art, music in the body of the school day, all students, so we can continue to build upon the excellence that's already here in our school district. The instructional budget broken down. You'll see that there are budget lines from the instructional administration. That is pretty much your directors, school improvement with Dr. Vavanason, building principals, APs. The AP that we are recommending for this budget is embedded in that line as well. We see that if you look at the 7.21%, those are some staffing allocations. Psychologists taken out of grants and special educators moving into grants, so that's why you see, you know, it's not necessarily an increase in the overall budget, but it's an increase in the budget line. You'll see that within that pupil services line, that's where our clubs and our co-curricular activities are in there. And we know that that's critically important. The board recognizes that connections are the primary driver of student success and student motivation. Students come to school just so they can participate in their club. We've added more clubs to the elementary schools. We continue to have hundreds of clubs, over 100 clubs in our secondary buildings as well because of that investment. If you take a look at our instructional budget, also you'll see special education, 4.49%. That's because we service a range of needs, and we're proud and honored to serve our students. There's private placements embedded in that number. We have a number of students going to Hillside, Norman Howard, the Ville of Hope, or Mary Carola, just to name a few. We have BOCES as a partner, BOCES, Bird Morgan, eStart, and the related services that students need. Again, that's embedded in that special ed budget. Bless you. The overall increase for our instructional budget is 3.39%. Any questions? Thoughts? Pictures you want to create?
No, I just love it. You pointed it out that demand, even in our sporting activities, really seems to be increased right now after, you know, the last couple of years especially. So knowing that there's a lot of interest, the demand for clubs, demand for extracurricular activities, it's great to be able to say, let's put some resources there. It's a good way to service them and to make those connections so they leave school excited to come back the next day, but also happy with their experience.
So you take a look at that 7.21% in pupil services. That's the commitment to the social emotional well-being. Our community said that's a priority. In our schools, we've added layers of mental health support as students have transitioned back, and we're seeing that that continues to be a need. It also includes our athletic budget. It also includes, like I said, our clubs and after-school activities. Now we're speaking to bringing all of the other parts of the budget into focus here. You'll see the Board of Education has a line there of 26.13% increase. That's because we hired a full-time board clerk who unfortunately is not with us, but we wish her the best as she's zooming in. As she's zooming in, she's probably gonna buzz me. But yes, thank you. Again, that's where a majority of those funds are allocated. We do appreciate the board's volunteerism here. You know, as we support our students, that budget is not allocated toward any board funding for salary, that's for sure. Central administration, that's the superintendent's office, the 4.9% increase. That's my secretary, that's me, that's the supplies and materials that go along with central administration and business administration as well. You'll see a 4.8% increase. That's the business office. And by the way, Mr. Stevens, I would have to say thank you to your team for, you know, all three of you, Monica Shannon and Chris Eckert and Matt Stevens, who are making sure all these numbers work out and all these budget line items align. 4.8%. There's been some salary line items shifted in this budget line as well. Central services, 5.36%. That's our maintenance, buildings and grounds. That's our commitment to facilities and making sure we upkeep and manage all of our properties and lots here in Fairport. And the cost of working with BOCES is down a little bit. That's because our commitment to pay off the capital improvement project has dipped a little, so you'll see a short dip in our total budget line there. 3.92% for general support. Transportation. I spoke to it earlier. Many variables impact the cost of transportation. I know
Fuel's been a hot conversation, and those are things that we need to continue to plan for. Mr. Stevens and the bus transportation team do a great job of anticipating and managing this component of our budget. We'll be looking at purchasing buses, trading in 8 buses and receiving 8 buses. They're put on a cycle. It's a best practice so we can keep our fleet safe for our most important passengers, that's our students. You'll see an 11.25% increase, and part of that is also the salary. There was a contract settlement, and you'll see that's where the total netted out at 11.25%. And as we continue to recruit more, and we can reduce our contract costs with other agencies, other transportation agencies, and hopefully invest in more transportation employees in Fairport. I spoke to the pool. We have a lifeguard that we have to support, and for community usage to support this service, we're keeping the line item flat there. Employee benefits. It always amazes me, like, we are a high functioning, real live organization. We have responsibilities, and we're honored and obligated to make good on those responsibilities. You'll see the employee retirement system. Those are our clericals, our teacher aides, our non-certified food service employees in the ERS, the employee retirement system. Again, these numbers are set by New York State. The comptroller's office is part of that communication and that process. And you'll see these numbers fluctuate. Mr. Stevens and I spent some time looking at the different fluctuations. I know that's something that we don't control, but we have to plan for it. But there's a minus almost 20% change there for ERS. TRS is 10.2% increase, and these are all percentages based off current salaries. And so that's how that impacts our budget, and it's a cost of doing business moving forward. Questions about benefits? Damien, you used to love this one. You're ready to say something.
I've asked it 50 times already, but
I saw your bubble.
TRS and TRS, what the difference are. But I think the important point is that, and that you do point out, is that there's a large part of our budget that's just mandated. There's contractual or legal. So the part of the budget that is discretionary, I love the saying that you say, Brett, and that is our budget reflects our priorities, right? And I think in a lot of ways, the different things where we've allocated budget dollars and the growth factor you'll see does reflect the priority that we have as a board and as a district. But a huge percentage of it also is just stuff that just legally has to happen. And is the growth of those items are out of our control, but we have to be responsive within our budget, which is a finite amount, to meet the needs that we have from a legal perspective and contractual perspective. So that sometimes impacts program, and what we do as best as we can is to protect the program and grow the program while still meeting the needs of the legal aspects of the budget.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
Thank you.
And I know we're going to get an update at the Monroe County Labor Relations Committee next month on the health insurance plan, which is now self-funded. It took quite a while to get there after Obamacare, but that's a steep increase, but not compared to the general population, right? So we're part of the Rochester area school health plan overall, which it being a highly educated population of people who are insured, they consume better than the general population does, so our increases are smaller. But healthcare, right, it's always a significant increase every year in our budget. 6% low relative to the overall market. So,
and you see some health and dental and other benefits. Again, we're a live organization. We have professionals. We have individuals who take care of our children, and we feel obligated, I know the board does, to make sure that we're doing all we can to support them.
I found one of the interesting paradigms in the budget process is realizing that from a public education facility, our income is relatively capped, right? The tax cap is we can't go above the tax cap. We can't raise local taxes by 8 or 9% if we need to. It's capped. We have a legal cap on how much revenue we can receive, and then we get state funding or foundation aid, which was healthy this year, but in years past has been very, very skinny. So our income is capped, but our expense growth is sometimes not under our control and is well beyond percentage-wise the growth of the revenue that we have. So, I think you do a really impressive job working with the budget and trying to reflect the priorities that we have to make it work. And, there's many things that you do to accomplish that, but I think that this year our foundation aid coming from the state was healthy, and I think it allows us to do a lot of things that we may not be able to do in years past. Accurate? Anybody? I mean, you've been here longer than I have. I think this has been a relatively positive year from a budget perspective.
We're very pleased. The advocacy that has happened throughout the last several years. I know the Board of Education has traveled to Albany, spoke to legislators, senators, local and state, to advocate for that foundation aid. And next year will be another, hopefully, good year for foundation aid, as the governor has said that next year will be the year that will be fully funded.
Quite honestly, Cuomo was not. He was not really an ally of public education in this state, and so whenever he spoke, it was cringeworthy in terms of the messages that he was delivering and the stringent mandates that he put on schools. Was difficult to work with. So,
thank you. You'll see that we have interest and principal payments. There was a short-term debt that we needed to take on, and Mr. Stevens planned for that, or is planning for that. You see that $430,000 payment on a short-term debt band that we are responsible to pay. And you'll see that there is a negative $800,000. A project was paid. There was a 2004 project here at Fairport High School, a high school addition, that was finally paid off and retired. And you'll see that that's why there is a minus 6.96% decrease there. Overall total expenditures, you'll see how it all plays out looking together, with general support, instruction, transportation, community services, employee benefits, debt service, and debt service and interfund transfers for 3.85% budget-to-budget increase. Mr. Stevens is going to talk about the most important part, though, how we're going to pay for that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Provenzano. So the next piece we're going to talk about are the revenues within the budget and how that supports the expense side as a whole here. The different revenues that we have, as Mr. Buffin mentioned earlier, property taxes and state aid. Those are two of our largest revenues that we have that come from the throughout the revenues. We have sales tax we get from Monroe County, distributed out to the Monroe County school districts. Other revenue, charges for services, that'd be facility use, interest earnings, admissions, and then finally our reserves and fund balance in terms of what we budget to help offset any revenue shortage side to balance to have a balanced budget overall. So I'll jump over the slide. We've seen this each year. The tax cap, it's been in place since 2011. Not a 2% tax cap. There are exclusions built in terms of how the formula works. We'll jump to that in a couple of slides. But here's a historical look at our budget, tax levy, and tax rate. And you can see on average, our budget has increased 2.38%. 22-23, as Mr. Provenzano mentioned, that is up 3.85, reflecting our priorities, some of the different pieces that we have flow through within the budget this school year, continue to be supported for next school year. Tax levy, you can see since the over the past 5 years, on average 2.63%. Like I mentioned, the 2% tax cap does not necessarily mean that the tax cap limit or tax levy limit for the district will be 2%. There are exclusions for capital local share of capital payments, as well as capital purchases such as buses. So each one of those years that you see, the district was at the tax cap. So it still was only required the greater than 50% vote on the school budget. So even with the 3.21, 3.28, those were years that we had debt come on for new project debt in those years. And the tax rate, you can see on the blue line, it dips down low in 1819. That's because there was a large reassessment in the town of Perryton. So there's an inverse relationship when the overall tax base goes up within the town of Perryton for the school district to the when the tax base goes up, inverse relationship to the tax rate. So you'll see the percentage actually drop. It's just how the dollars are spread out with the tax levy across the community overall. So in most cases throughout the years, I believe actually in all cases throughout the years, you can see the tax rate increase is actually less than the tax levy increase. And that's due to slightly increased tax bases in each one of those school years. Here's the formula established by the state for the tax cap calculation. So I won't run through the entire thing, but basically you have to start with a prior year levy, apply some factors that are established by the state, a growth factor within the town of Perryton. Also skipping down to the allowable levy growth factor, which is the lesser of 2% or CPI. CPI this past year was actually 4.7%, which is the largest since the tax cap has been in place. That is the piece that's capped at 2% growth. So that's the multiplier overall on that piece. We've seen it less than 2%, and then the growth factor there is actually less than 1.02. So this is the first year since the implementation of the tax cap itself that it's been such a large discrepancy, over double of the 2% cap itself. So just a piece of information as we flow through the formula. And then we have pilots. Those are payments in lieu of taxes. Those actually are not within the tax base. Those are billed separately. They have agreements in place at both the County of Monroe Industrial Development Agency as well as the Fairport Village Industrial Development Agency. And then the capital levy for current year, that's the $1.2 million is the local share of our debt payments, less the building aid coming in, as well as the purchase of buses, less the transportation aid coming in on those buses. So of that 1.2 million, actually about a little over 300,000 is related to the buses. That's the local share after aid on buses. So the remaining is the capital debt. If you look up top, prior year it was 1.5 million in 21-22, and that's where you see that debt drop off. On the expense side of the budget, we also see a reduction in aid on the revenue side of the budget. So it drops our exclusion down as a whole there. So again, you can see the formula and the exclusions, they all add up to a 2.11% tax cap for the district for 22-23. Our revenues related to state aid, foundation aid, as talked about before, it's our we see a large increase in the phase-in of foundation aid. It's the second year of a 3-year plan for the state to phase in foundation aid according to the formula for school districts. And here you see a $2.6 million increase, or a little over 10%. Foundation aid is our largest aid. It's meant for all operating expenses across the entire district. So ours is $27.7 million for 22-23.
Just for historical reference on that foundation aid increase of $2.6 million, there's been years past where we've had zero increase, and then some years where we've had like a $40,000 increase, which is minuscule.
Correct.
So that's a big number, right?
It's the largest numbers, yes, since they actually were restoring gap elimination adjustment. This is the largest number we've seen ever in a foundation aid increase.
And this is still the proposed budget from the governor, right?
Still a proposed budget
Okay.
From governor. The budget will get set by the on April 1st, ideally on or around April 1st.
So you just mentioned gap elimination, though, and that is for the newbies on the board. For reference, not only was our foundation aid flat to minuscule, but they had this thing called gap elimination where they would take money back. So they would take millions of dollars back from the district. So we had a net impact of negative $2 or $3 or $4 million every year. For about 5 years, we had to deal with that, right?
Yes.
So that was difficult.
Yeah, there was 1 year, our final year when it was restored, it was 3.2 million. That was the amount of revenue we were increased in 1 year. And we had 5 million still to be restored in 2 years, and it was 1.8 and 3.2 over
I think
those 2
you
years.
used to have a chart in this process that talked about the 5-year duration of gap elimination, and I think they took back about $32 million of aid to
We
the
didn't get it
district.
back when they eliminated it.
Right, yeah,
Right.
that's not coming back.
Correct.
Yep,
Same thing for unrealized foundation aid.
yeah.
You know, there's been foundation aid that we haven't received. Haven't been fully funded as per the formula.
Right.
So that's money that we can't recoup.
Right, yep.
It's a great point. The next three lines of aid, those are expense-based aid. So money that we spend in the current school year, we receive aid on eligible expenses in the following school year. So transportation is aided, expenses are aided, BOCES, certain BOCES expenses, we receive BOCES aid back on, and then our building aid. So here you see about a $42,000 increase, primarily related to, there was a drop in building aid, but a bump up in transportation aid, a little bit more in BOCES aid, so it kind of overall those net out there. Our excess cost aids, our aid is aid received on our special education programs. Those will be both within district, our BOCES students at BOCES, and the programs that we pay for through BOCES and have enrollments in related services, as well as our private placements, and that's the aid we receive back on both private and public excess costs. And then our aidable materials, urban, suburban, our tuition aid, you can see here just a small increase overall there. Textbook, library materials, hardware, software, those aids typically have dropped a little bit. They're enrollment based over the years. And then urban, suburban aid and tuition aid are all based on enrollment in programs at group homes, as well as attending school in Fairport through the urban, suburban program. So those tend to remain relatively flat. Sometimes we see slight dips and increases over the years. Overall, a $2.7 million increase in state aid, or 6.2% increase. And here's a graph speaking to what our foundation aid has looked like back to 2016-17. So you can see slight increases over the years. 1 year, I believe, was pretty close to flat, which from 1920 to 2021, that was a small increase. And then in 21-22, began the phase-in of the foundation aid to schools. And then 22-23 is where we see that $2.6 million increase in foundation aid. Yes.
Damon wasn't lying.
Yeah. Yep. And here's a look at the total revenue, putting all those pieces together. Our property tax, again, you can see property tax and state aid, those are the two largest pieces, 1.7 million and 2.7 million respectively. And then our sales tax and other revenue, that's mostly made up of sales tax coming back from the county. And you see a slight increase here of $380,000, mostly related to sales tax. We've seen some numbers coming in higher than anticipated. So there's an increase in revenue for 22-23 in that line. So overall, $4.95 million increase in revenue overall for $137 million. So the next piece, if we remember back looking at the expense side, there's still a little bit of a difference between the actual expense side of the budget and the revenue side. So how is that supported? And that would be through our reserves and fund balance. So here, our assigned appropriated fund balance at year end, the district can decide to allocate funds to help support the budget in the following school year, essentially helping to keep the tax rate to help mitigate the tax increase and support that piece and give money back overall within the budget on the revenue side. So here you see right now projecting to keep the assigned appropriated fund balance flat at $4 million and continuing to allocate through budget transfer to debt service, but this is $168,000. It's related to premium that we received on the bond anticipation note. We have that payment coming up in July. So this $168,000 will support that premium payment on the short-term debt. And then the next three reserves are reserves that we can utilize to support some operating related expenses. So our tax tertiary reserve of $20,000 help pay for any tax refunds, unemployment reserve for unemployment expenses, and our retirement contribution reserve for both the employee retirement system and teacher retirement system of $2.24 million to support those expenses overall. So here's the piece and adding them all together. So our budget as of today in the first draft is $144 million. Revenue support of $137 million, and then add in the transfer to debt service, as well as the reserves and fund balance. That brings our revenues and fund balance and reserves up to $143.6 million, which is just shy of the total budget at this point in time of $414,000. In years past, when we're at the stage in the budget, until the governors come through with an adopted budget, we've seen that number in the millions, because our foundation aid has essentially been proposed flat at some points in time during this point in the year. So as we look at that, there's still some pieces that we continue to look at within the district to bring that into alignment overall and close the budget gap. It can be done through the budgetary side, can be done through looking at additional fund balance or reserves. So I'd say overall at this point in time, much more positive spot than we've been in compared to years past, especially. Also still continuing, you remember we still have the stimulus funds, we're still continuing to support, while this is the general fund budget, we're still continuing to support some positions and pieces through the stimulus funding. So that's a whole separate piece overall. So, work within all those different areas to balance out and come to a balanced budget proposal. Of the overall, you can see at the bottom, the percentage that we budget for reserves and fund balance. Slow decline in terms of what we allocate, primarily because the budget's increasing and reserves and fund balance staying relatively flat. So 4.43% is what our reserves are of total budget. Here's just a quick graph of the revenues overall. I won't spend too much time on this, but state aid and our property tax, you can see, take up the majority of the over 90% of our revenues as a whole. The next piece we'll be talking about as it relates to budget, long-term planning would be our current reserve funds. And our reserve funds are set aside for specific purposes. So we'll take a look through the different reserve funds we have as a district, why it's set aside, and the balances as of June of 2021. It's a good practice to have reserve funds to help pay for unanticipated events, help offset local share when it comes to capital projects, and in some cases help support the general fund budget for any operating expenses for large increases in any current year. So first we have our capital reserve funds, and we have multiple capital reserves. We have two of which are set aside for building reserve. And here with the 2018 reserve has $3.1 million remaining. If you remember, we utilized $7 million for the 2019 capital project. So we actually funded that up and brought that money right back in within a couple of years to help reduce the borrowing in local costs for the 2019 project. We have our capital technology reserve of $1.9 million balance. We do have $185,000 that has been approved to come out during the 21-22 school year. So that number will be slightly lower at the end of this year. And then we have our capital bus reserve of $665,000, which we used to utilize in the past. And we were able to ease off the reserve and rely strictly on the general fund. But this money is here and available should there be a year of assistance needed for purchase of buses overall. All of these reserves for usage must be voter approved, so have to go through the voter approval process in order to take out of the reserve. They're voter approved reserves to establish the reserves. And actually at the end of the presentation, you'll see a couple of propositions that will be going on the May vote related to some capital reserves as a whole. Next few reserves here are, these are restricted reserves as well for specific reasons. Our repair reserve That would be to pay the cost of anything, any repairs or capital improvements that we could come across in any school year, emergency repair. We've been fortunate in years past to have capital projects ongoing, to not have to utilize this reserve. But if there was not a capital project taking place and work that could be adjusted within the project, this reserve would be important in order to be able to utilize to help make any repairs. Our employee benefit accrued liability reserve, that can be used for compensated absences only upon separation from the district, whether it be through resignation or retirement. We pay out vacation time, sick leave, if it's going into a 403B, any of those different pieces. And then the next three are tax certiorari reserve, liability reserve, and insurance reserve. Tax certiorari, like I mentioned, we do budget $20,000 to pay for any tax refunds. We do maintain a portion balance of the overall exposure for the district as it relates to our Article 7 tax certs. However, typically settlement of any tax certs have not historically, knock on wood, I should be careful, come in at the overall requested amount. But this has been able to help support any monies that may not have been budgeted to help take care of those, any refunds. Our liability reserve and insurance reserve, those can be utilized for any claims not covered by insurance, legal fees, any of those different pieces overall that we can utilize those funds for. And we have utilized the liability reserve over the years.
How are our legal fees? Are they going up in these modern times?
Overall, we have been within budget. We budget $150,000 overall within the general fund for legal fees. So we have been able to support that through the general fund at this point. It was, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was 75 years back. It did increase. We were supporting some liabilities through the liability reserve in terms of legal fees, and it's since dropped down since those costs were up. So it's been within the $150,000 range overall.
The majority of those funds are with Harris Beach?
Yes.
That were, we seem to be consulting quite a bit lately, so.
Correct, yep. Through Harris Beach, yes.
Okay.
The next few reserves are, these are board authorized reserves, so established by resolution and then funded by resolution. We have our employee retirement system reserve, which can be only used on expenses related to the retirement system. In any given year, it can't exceed our actual total cost for the retirement system. We have $9 million in that reserve. Our teacher retirement system reserve, we've continued to build up over the past few years since it was authorized by the state. It's capped at 2% of prior year salaries in terms of what it can actually be funded per year. So it's worked out to be approximately $800,000 to $900,000 that we're able to fund it in any given year, and it's capped at that amount. Unemployment insurance reserve can be used to pay for unemployment costs, can help save any positions if we're in a year that assistance would be needed there. So it's been helpful to have that in place. And then workers' compensation reserve for our self-funded plan for workers' comp that we have through the consortium for that as well.
Just in general, with the multiple reserves that we have, I would say, why we have those reserves, just like in your own family, when you build up reserves for specific projects or purposes, it helps you avoid the sudden impact of a large expense that's not planned, right? So again, with the goal of protecting our program, protecting our staff, having these reserve funds allows us to adapt to changes in the macro environment that we don't control.
Correct. Yes, that's really accurate in terms of also it's helped us take years in which we could use a little bit more support and utilize those reserves to help us long-term with our long-range planning, especially looking at when foundation aid is finished being phased in, what are our plans long-term, and utilizing the reserves to help continue sustainability overall. And those unexpecteds definitely to help out there too.
What's our credit rating, Matt?
Oh, God, off our bond rating, I don't know off the top of my head.
On.
I'll know. It'll be back up for evaluation when we go out for long-term debt. So
Junk, I think.
Nope,
we're
it's
okay.
good. It's good. Yeah.
Right.
It's a great rate. Yeah. Now talking a little bit about the propositions that will be on the ballot. 3 propositions, 2 of which are the authorization to create and fund capital reserves, one being building reserve and the other being a technology reserve. Reason being is there are caps to how much can be funded in a reserve. So our current 2020 capital reserve has a cap of 15 million. So this at least enables the opportunity to fund this reserve with the planning of the 2022 capital referendum. So in order to utilize money or assign it to use in a project, there needs to be money in a reserve. It can't be put in afterwards. It has to become part of the proposition. So this timing is important, as we could be the last opportunity to fund capital reserve beyond the 15 million in our other reserves. So that would be the proposal for that. Proposition number 2 is the authorization to spend from the current capital technology reserve fund of 1.35 million, and that's related to our wireless access points. So we've talked about district-wide radio system, PA system upgrade. That's, we talked that our health and safety, district-wide safety committees, and overall, those purchases would be appropriated through the general fund and spent through BOCES to drive BOCES aid back on the expense. So Proposition 3 goes right in line with Proposition 2, and that's the authorization to create and fund a new capital technology reserve. Our current capital technology reserve years are expired. So there's once the term is over for the reserve, it was created back in 2005. It was a 10-year reserve. We can continue to spend out of it. However, we can no longer fund it beyond the 10-year lifespan. So in order to take the aid received from the $1.35 million expense, proposing to create a new reserve to stay within our reserve floors that we've talked about at Audit and Finance Committee, which would put that aid back into the reserve as a whole.
So we'll have 2 capital reserve funds for technology, or we'll take the balance in the one and move it to the other?
So it's a little tricky. Within the proposition resolution, you'll see one of the options for funding would be to take the remaining balance following any voter-approved propositions through June of 2022 and fund that into this reserve as well. Trying to consolidate the reserves. Yeah, it's tricky because we have a proposition on the ballot to spend, so we don't have an exact dollar amount, just the balance, correct. Yep. So if it's not done through the proposition, then it would have to be voted on at a future date. So the goal is to get it all within the proposition.
Just in the case where the proposition fails, which I wouldn't think it would, but if it did fail and we didn't have authorization to create the new fund, what would we do with the balance in the old fund?
The old fund balance would continue to stay. But
we just couldn't grow it.
You just couldn't put money into a new reserve if received on.
But we can still spend the money.
Correct.
But that does impact long-term planning with our use of technology in that particular conversation. That does impact our ability to support a potential project in the future to offset the cost to the taxpayer. So, when we created the strategic plan a few years back, our community told us loud and clear that, let's be stewards of our buildings. Let's do it in a fiscally responsible way. And I know our Audit and Finance Committee spends a lot of time looking at the reserves. The board has set it as a goal, and we're using this as an opportunity to make good on that commitment.
That all the reasons for it, and I wouldn't anticipate it wouldn't pass, but I just think, understanding what Plan D would be in that case. But I definitely think the creation and the use of reserve funds are so strategic to what we do.
Yep. I'll turn it over to Mr. Provenzano to finish up.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. And again, thank you to Monica Shannon and Chris Eckert, managing all these moving parts to make sure that we can, tell our story through our programming. We have a couple important days to share on April 12th at Fairport High School, right here in room 512 at 6:30. There'll be a presentation of our total budget in its final draft, and hopefully the board will feel comfortable and confident with this proposed budget so we can adopt it. That's on April 12th. On May 3rd, same place, same time,
Fairport High School, room 512 at 6:30. That's May 3rd. There'll be a public hearing. We'll be inviting community members, community stakeholders to come in here and interact with us at the public hearing on our proposed budget. On May 17th, there'll be a budget vote and board elections from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Johanna Perrin Middle School. There'll also be the corresponding propositions that Mr. Stevens spent time talking about as well. So thank you very much for listening. This is really exciting to me, and I really appreciate the opportunity because it does speak to our priorities. It talks about where we want to invest for our children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess final comment, the one house budgets that came out from the State House and the State Senate were in line with the governor's, probably for the first time as far as I can remember as well. So April 1st looks like a good likelihood to know our final numbers and be able to submit the budget. Okay, whoops, sorry about that. Nightly alarm. No, yep. Okay, so next, board discussion action items, policy second reads. 4 policies there. We saw them last month in the first read, but so need a motion to approve the second reading. Brian, thank you. Erica, second. Any questions or comments on these policies? Second time around? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll call that 6-0. Fairport High School Club fundraisers. Motion to approve the attached fundraising requests. Erica first, second. Joyce, okay. Questions or comments about these fundraising activities? No? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
No opposed, 6-0. Field trip request, there were 2 late ads, just in case you had not noticed that this afternoon. They are on here, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so motion to approve these field trip requests. Erica, second. Marty, thank you. Questions or comments? No?
I just thought there were a lot of great opportunities, that's all.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah. Nice to see these coming back through again.
Yep.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. 6-0. Resolution approving the notice of annual meeting, budget vote, and election. So this is for this year, coming up May, right? All those things happening, the dates just given in the last presentation. Motion to approve. Brian, thank you. Second. Marty. Discussions or questions? No, all in favor? No opposed, 6-0. Approval of a seeker for capital outlay. Said it right, only taking a long time, is that right?
Yeah,
Seeker, so. Project at Dudley Elementary School, this is the 100,000, is that right? Budgeted item every year that's entirely reimbursed by the state. Proposed, by the way, to be raised to 250 by some of the one house budgets, but we'll see if that happens. Be the first time in what, 20 years? Motion to approve, Erica? Yep. Thank you. Second, Marty? Questions, comments? No, all in favor? No opposed, 6-0. Resolution to submit propositions to voters, so the ones that were just reviewed by Mr. Stevens, 3 propositions for the vote in May. Motion to approve. Erica, thank you. Brian, second. Questions, comments about those? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
No opposed, 6-0. Audit report revised responses. This is the first I've seen, but can add some color around it. The Finance Committee reviewed these just last week. Motion to accept the revised audit reports. Erica first, thank you. Joyce second. So this was because of a revision done by SED, not by the auditors, saying they would like some adjusted languages which were made.
Correct. It's really simply they wanted to see completion dates for some of the responses, and just added for June of 22. We have to submit these through the state education portal. They review them, and that's where the comments came back.
Right. So simple change. Say, oh yeah, we'll have these all corrected by this or whatever.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed. 6-0. 2019 Capital Improvement Project Commissioning Services. So a motion to approve these commissioning services, and we'll get a motion. Brian, second.
Second.
Erica, and now questions. Anybody wonder what commissioning services are? Yeah. Would you like to explain that?
Stevens?
Yep.
Yep, so these services in this 2019 capital project, we have a lot of mechanical HVAC work taking place. So it's essentially testing the equipment, making sure everything was done properly. You can see within the proposals, air handling units, fans, boilers, all those different pieces that are reviewed by a third party. In that case, proposed for ME Engineering, overall to perform those services for the district.
Other questions? All in favor? 6-0. And finally, 9I, appointment of vote personnel. Motion to approve these appointments. Brian, thank you. Also, second, Marty. Questions or comments?
Thank you to everyone for volunteering their service on this.
Indeed, it's a long day, right, for these people, and they do an excellent job. So grateful that they volunteer, many of them year after year. All in favor? Any opposed? None. 6-0. Okay, it's put it this way, yeah, it's 8:50, but it's open for board comments, right? No pressure.
I will keep it super quick. This was in the bright spots, but as a theater dad, I want to give a shout out to the great theater productions that have been happening the past couple weeks in our schools. Urinetown at the high school was a brilliant performance. Legally Blonde at Minerva the Land, I did not see it, but the very tough theater critic in my house said it was awesome. Martha Brown, Matilda Jr., I'm a little biased toward that one, but that was excellent. And this weekend, Wizards and Wands, Harry Potter parody is happening at JP. So thank you to all the teachers, all the staff, the custodial staff for making all these happen throughout. It's a wonderful experience for these kids on cast, on crew, for parents. And, I know I can speak for Martha Brown, the first in-person theater, onstage theater since 2019. It was a big deal for those kids and for everyone there. So just shout out to them.
And have been awesome.
The ultimate literary experience, right? And our students are just amazing and dynamic, and it's been fun to see them back in action. Thank you for mentioning that.
Between all the schools, the number of students, I just always love the number of students that get involved in cast and crew, right? Not everybody on stage, a lot of people behind the scenes. So thank you for that shout out. Others? Too much pressure from the president? Huh? No? Okay, or we're all tired, ready? Okay. We do have an executive session. I'll get a motion to move into executive session. There is no intention to make a decisions coming out, so we will immediately adjourn after exiting exec session. Thank you all for attending and those who watched. But a motion, Brian, thank you. A second? Second. Erica, all in favor? Aye. Very good. We'll take a quick break, right, to get started. Yeah.